Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Commander's Forge. My name is Andy Bentley, and the Forge is an area for me to talk about Magic, Commander, and anything else, as I try and bring this whole mental health thing under control with this raging sinus headache that I have. Now, last week I talked about my struggles with deck building and Magic in general, but I was invited to play a game over Spell Table with Andy Fleury, Andy Zupke, and Draco Lucian. And just getting to play those two games over Spell Table finally reignited what I'd been missing, which was just the ability to get my thoughts together and put them down, not necessarily on paper, but with cards. So since that game, I have updated 6 decks. I finished building my next League deck, and I finally put together a deck that I have been staring at for the better part of a month, trying to figure out what I want to do with it. Now, it is still a struggle for me to get to Friday Night Magic because most weeks I'm just so worn out by the end of the week that I just want to relax. But I'm hoping I can get my brothers or my cousin to have a game night coming up and I can test out some new decks. I actually have a couple of more updates to a deck that I played with them that I just found that I hadn't put in a deck yet. It brought back the thought that Magic is more fun with friends, and I just have not had the time for friends. There's just a lot going on personally and with my friends. That said, I am feeling better than I have been in the last couple of months, and I do hope that I can carry that through the next couple of months. Hopefully, I can get through May with relatively no problems. I do need to get my car in, get some brakes done, but that takes money. To get money, I need to get to work, which means I need my car. It's a whole thing. But if I can make it to the last week in May, I have the week off going into my birthday in the beginning of June. So things are looking up for the most part. But that's about all I've got here. And when I get back, I'm going to be talking about that deck that I finally put together that I'd been staring at for a month. And then from there, we will, end the podcast because that's what I do. I do a quick little talk at the beginning, a little break, and then I go over a deck. So I will see you in a minute. All right, and we are back. Now, today, we are going to talk about a new Boros deck that I put together. But it's not really a Boros deck, considering there's only 10-ish cards that have colors in them in the deck. That is Sentinel Sarah Lyons. She's 3 and Boros for a 4/4 human knight with Haste. As long as an artifact entered the battlefield under your control this turn, creatures you control get +2/+2. And she has Battalion, so whenever Sentinel Sarah Lyons and at least 2 other creatures attack, she deals damage equal to the number of artifacts you control to target player. So, the way I originally wanted to build this was just swarm the board with artifact tokens. And I do still have some of that in here, but that's not the only thing we're doing. So let's start with like the utility artifacts. So people are going to want to destroy our artifacts. So we want to run stuff like Dark Steel Forge, which is 9 mana, but it says artifacts you control have indestructible. Another thing in this line is Crypto Thrall, which is a 4 mana artifact creature. It's a 3/3 with other artifacts you control have hexproof. So that's important, is the word I'm looking for here, to protect our board because people are going to want to target us. Another thing that helps with this is just having more of what we want to do. So something like Mirrorworks, which is a 5 mana artifact. Whenever another non-token artifact enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 2. If you do, you put a token that's a copy of that artifact into the battlefield. So this goes really well with things that have ETB effects. Things like Skittering Surveyor, which is a 3 mana construct for a 1/2. And when it enters the battlefield, you search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. It's also good for things that like come in and make tokens, like Threefold Thunderhulk, which is a 7 mana gnome. It's a 0/0, but it enters with 3+1/+1 counters on it. Whenever the Threefold Thunderhulk enters the battlefield or attacks, create a number of 1/1 colorless gnome artifact creature tokens equal to its power. So it entering will trigger Sarah's ability the first time, but then if I don't have an artifact to play, this can continually make tokens. It also has 2, sacrifice another artifact, put a +1/+1 counter on the Threefold Thunderhulk, and sacrificing things in this deck is going to be important to like cycle through stuff, but we'll get to that in a minute. Other things that really like having double of is Mirror Battlesphere, 7 mana, 4/7 Mirror Construct, enters the battlefield, make 4 1/1 colorless mirror artifact creature tokens. Whenever Mirror Battlesphere attacks, you may tap X, untap mirror you control. If you do, the Battlesphere gets +X+0 till end of turn and deals X damage to the player or planeswalker it's attacking. We also have things like Solemn Simulacrum or Sad Robot. It's a 4 mana 2/2 golem. When it enters the battlefield, search your library for a basic land card, put it into the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. When it dies, draw a card. Angel of the Ruins is 5 white for a 5/7 angel. It has flying, and when Angel of the Ruins enters the battlefield, exile up to 2 target artifacts and or enchantments. It also has plane cycling for 2. And Meteor Golem. 7 mana, 3/3 golem. When it enters the battlefield, destroy target, non-land permanent, and opponent controls. So, yeah. Now, I also mentioned we like sacrificing things. Well, some of those things are like Wormcoil Engine, which is a 6 mana 6/6 worm with Death Touch and Lifelink. When it dies, you put a 3/3 colorless worm artifact creature token with Death Touch and a 3/3 colorless worm artifact creature with Lifelink onto the battlefield. Again, if you have 2 of them, then you make 4 of them. Good times. We also have Triplicate Titan, which is a 9 mana 9/9 golem with flying, vigilance, and trample. When it dies, you create a 3/3 colorless golem with flying, 1 with vigilance, and 1 with trample. And yeah, so sacrificing our artifacts is a good thing because we have ways of mitigating it. So the 4 other, because we do have that one creature, sacrifice outlets in here are our Quirk Clan Ironworks, which is a 4 mana artifact. You can sacrifice an artifact to add 2 to your mana pool. To colorless, very specifically. Ashnod's Altar is a 3 mana artifact. To sacrifice a creature, add 2 colorless mana to your mana pool. Altar of Dementia is a 2 mana artifact that says sacrifice a creature. Target player puts a number of cards equal to the sacked creature's power from the top of his or her library to his or her graveyard. So I'd really love a new version of this card that just says sacrifice a creature, target player mills X cards, where X is the creature's power. That would be much easier to say. And Arcbound Ravager. 2 mana, 0/0 beast. It says sacrifice an artifact, put a 1/1 counter on Arcbound Ravager, and it has modular 1, so that means it enters with a +1/+1 counter on it, and when it dies, you can move its counters to another creature. Alright, next up on the list is our utility artifacts. This is stuff that does a thing, right? So first up, we have Shimmermere, which is a 3 mana 2/2 mirror. It has flash, but it also says you may cast artifact spells as though they had flash. Kuldotha Forge Master, 5 mana 3/5 construct. It says tap, sacrifice 3 artifacts, search your library for an artifact card, put it onto the battlefield, and then shuffle your library. Canoptic Spider is a 5 mana 4/4 spider with flying that says whenever another non-token artifact creature or vehicle enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. Steel Overseer is a 2 mana 1/1 construct that says tap, put a +1/+1 counter on each artifact creature you control. It's another one we wouldn't mind having 2 of. Rose Cutthroat Raider is 2 red for a 3/2 robot with first strike, and it has raid at the end of combat on your turn. If you attack this turn, create a junk token for each opponent you attacked. And a junk token is an artifact that says tap, sack this artifact, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn, activate only as a sorcery. And Rose also says whenever you sacrifice a junk, add red. And good old Burnished Heart. 3 mana 2/2 elk with 3. Sacrifice the heart, search your library for 2 basic land cards, put them onto the battlefield tapped, and shuffle your library. Now we move into the cards that want us to sacrifice cards, specifically artifacts. And we also don't mind having, 2 of these to just randomly rip stuff out of our graveyard. First up, we have Mirror Retriever, which is a 2 mana 1/1 mirror. When it dies, return another target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. We have Junk Diver, which is a 3 mana 1/1 bird with flying. When it dies, return another artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. Workshop Assistant is a 3 mana 1/2 construct. When it dies, return another target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. And Scrap Trawler, which is a 3 mana 3/2 construct, and whenever it or another artifact you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, return to your hand target artifact card in your graveyard with the lesser converted mana cost. Having multiple of the sack a thing, get a thing, and Scrap Trawler out means you're just constantly refilling your hand with anything in your graveyard, basically. There are 2 cards I have that really work well with a lot of those ETB triggers. The first of those being the Eternal Wanderer, 4 white for a 5 loyalty planeswalker. No more than 1 creature can attack the Eternal Wanderer each combat. Her +1 is exile up to 1 target artifact or creature, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. For 0, you make a 2/2 samurai creature with double strike. And for -4, for each player, choose a creature that player controls. Each player sacrifices all creatures they control not chosen this way. So, sure, you can use it to mitigate the board, but I'm mostly here to flicker things so that I get more value, because this deck likes to get value. Speaking of value, the other thing that really works well with those ETBs is the Sword of Hearth and Home. 3 mana equipment, equips for 2. Equip creature gets +2/+2, pro green and white. And whenever the equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you exile up to one target creature you own, then search your library for a basic land card, put both onto the battlefield under your control, and then shuffle. Okay, so that's almost enough talk about artifacts, but let's get into why I actually decided to finally pull the trigger on building this deck. I was walking through the store the other day, and I passed by the Osgir the Reconstructor deck, and it was on sale for about $30, which is significantly less than what I've seen it for elsewhere. So I decided to buy it, and I took what I liked from it, and then I smashed it together with other things that I had already set aside. And then I cut it down from like 250 cards to about 100 cards, and then from 100 cards to about 88 cards, then from 88 cards down to about 70 cards, and then from 70 cards down to about 64 cards. And this is how I got the deck. So I decided that Osgir, the Reconstructor, did have a place in the deck. So he's 2 and Boros for a 4/4. He is a giant artificer. He has vigilance and 1, sacrifice an artifact. Target creature you control gets +2/+0 till end of turn. So this is another sack outlet. The funny thing with how things stack, so if Sentinel Sarah Lyons has had an artifact enter, she gives the team +2/+2. That includes herself. That makes her a 6 power commander. If you sacrifice a thing, you can make her an 8 power commander, which makes her a 3-hit commander. And then you can pay X and tap to exile target artifact card with mana value X from your graveyard, create 2 tokens that are copies of the exiled card, activate only as a sorcery. So this kind of goes hand in hand with those loopy guys that try and get stuff out of the graveyard. Say I get to a point where I just can't do that anymore. This is a way to continue doing it until I run out of stuff in my graveyard. Speaking of that Osgir deck, though, the backup commander also has a place in here, and that is Alibu Ancient Witness for 3 and Boros for a 4/5 golem. Other artifact creatures you control have haste. That's like the main reason it made it in, because I have a lot of artifact creatures in this deck. But whenever one or more artifact creatures you control attacks, Alibu Ancient Witness deals X damage to any target and you scry X, where X is the number of tapped artifacts you control. I did go out of my way to not put a ton of vigilance in this deck just for this. Also, there wasn't a ton of things that give artifact creatures vigilance. But that isn't to say there isn't any. I just didn't go out of my way to include them. That deck also gave us Lochiel Clockwork Scholar, which is 2 and a white for a 2/4 Elephant Artificer. It says prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to attacking artifact creatures you control. Which is that's the main reason he's in here. But whenever one or more artifact creatures enter the battlefield under your control, draw a card. This ability triggers only once per turn, so it's a little extra card draw, but the main thing is it protects our artifact creatures when they attack. Now we have a couple of other creatures that have ETB effects that go well with our flickering set. That's Pia Nalar, otherwise known as Sad Mom. She's 2 and a red for a 2/2 Human Artificer. When she enters, you make a 1/1 colorless Thopter. You can pay 1 and a red to give an artifact creature +1/+0 till end of turn, and you can pay 1, sacrifice an artifact, and say target creature can't block this turn. So again, it's another sack outlet. It's another thing that makes artifact creature, and that's basically what we want to be doing. Next up we have Thopter Engineer, which is 2 and a red for a 1/3 Human Artificer. Again, when it enters, you make a 1/1 Thopter. But artifact creatures you control have haste is the main reason she got put in there. But again, it's great that you can like flicker her, keep making tokens. It's great. Next up we have Wake the Past 5 and Boros for a sorcery. To return all artifact cards from your graveyard to the battlefield, they gain haste until end of turn. sometimes you just need everybody in the pool. But finally, we have the number one card in this deck. As long as you have it and your commander, you are guaranteed to trigger your commander every turn. That is Loyal Apprentice. 1 and a red for a 2/1 human artificer with haste and lieutenant. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control your commander, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying. That token gains haste until end of turn. It's just the best card in the deck. Like, hands down. Like, if you have it and your commander, nothing else really matters. Just move to combat, make a guy, attack. Move to combat, make a guy, attack. I did avoid extra combats in this deck because I didn't want to be that guy. But I do have one more card I want to touch on really quick, just because it's the stupidest card. That's Patchwork Automaton. It's a 2-mana, 1/1 construct with Ward 2, and whenever you cast an artifact spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Patchwork Automaton. The number of times I've played this stupid card in artifact decks, and it just randomly becomes like a 23/23 that at the very least is going to eat a blocker. It's so stupid, but I love it. I've rambled on about this deck long enough, I think. From here, I will call it, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening. All of my links can be found in my link tree in the description below. I would like to thank Ian Foss and Cody Mulpey of the band The Crypt for allowing me to use music for my opening and ending, along with Nate and Erica Jacobs for making my original logo. And I would also like to thank Christina McNichol for creating my new logo. And I'll see you next time.